have to remain mindful that the fact that the issue at hand is a very serious one.
Not Just the Blues, a show designed to educate the people of our community about the everyday trauma that we experience on a daily basis. And we believe that once you've been informed, that we can begin the healing process from the process of the trauma that has been done. My name is Dr. Denise Hicks Ray. I'm a clinical psychologist, board-certified expert in traumatic stress, and my favorite role in life is being a facilitator of healing. And we have a very interesting topic today, and we're going to talk about a medical disorder that many adults face, and they may not even know it. It's information that's going to help you and heal you inside and out. At one point or another, all of us have let something slip our mind, or become distracted, or lost focus. It's kind of expected with all of the things we have to juggle in the course of a day, like work, home, and family. Let's face it, stress can do that to you. But what if it's more than that? What if you're an adult trying to deal with attention deficit disorder each and every day? Is there a way to lead a normal life where you can remain focused, complete tasks, and reach goals? Is there really a way to successfully go about life as an adult with ADD? Today, we're going to talk in depth about adult ADD, or attention deficit disorder, in the African American community. And starting out with our first guest, Anita Hartley. Anita, thank you so very much for being here. Now, you're a college student who suffers with ADD. How are you handling the demands of college and your disorder?
Actually, what has helped me along, I started recently, I'd say about a year ago, on Strattera, which has been extremely helpful for me. I came from a D average up to the Dean's List for the last 2 years, and it's helping me to focus. I've done more things like putting blackboards around my house to remind me to do or to not to do things, and getting involved with other people who do have ADD, and sharing and talking, and staying as focused as I possibly can without forgetting to stay focused.
So it's actually a wonderful thing that there's such a stigma, of course, associated
Absolutely.
with any sort of disorder or any condition, let's just say, that society has labeled as something negative. And if we identify the fact that there is something going on that's unbalanced, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're a bad person, or that we cannot function and make sure that we are headed in the right path for prosperity. Tell us a little bit about when you knew that you were diagnosed with ADD.
I was really struggling with trying to concentrate on the most simplest tasks. Trying to read a passage from the Bible, I would have to read it over and over and over again, one passage, and then I would actually forget immediately what I was reading. I would miss appointments, I would sleep late, it was like a lot of information coming into my head, and just flashes of images, and not being able to concentrate. If you were to say, "Hi, my name is," and you would start with a dialogue, immediately I would forget your name because I'm trying to focus on the next sentence that you're saying.
And so, as opposed to the stereotypical description being shiftless and lazy and not really wanting to aspire to any level of any greatness, we have to find out what's going on
Exactly, absolutely. A lot of us that have adult attention deficit, we were not necessarily hyperactive as children. I was on the kind of scary, quiet side, but we still had some type of learning disability, and we really didn't realize what we were doing, what was going on. And as an adult, we try to stay on task, and we can't and becomes very frustrating. It sends us into depression. We tend to draw back. We feel alienated until we realize there's something wrong and we seek help. And there's lots of resources and information out there. It's just that people need to understand is that it's not a bad thing. Actually, it's just a thing, and that with as much help and input as possible, we can overcome it and continue to go on with life.
So when we talk about resources, I find that particularly in the African American community, we have not been taught very well how to access resources. And so therefore, this information may be out there, and so may be people to help you, but we don't really know how to move in the direction of accessing that. Can you give us a little bit of help of how you were able to get to someone who was subsequently able to help you?
Well, first I started, for those who have access to an internet, I would suggest just typing in adult attention deficit disorder, and there's a wealth of information that comes out. There was one writer that said, I'm not going to write a whole lot, because if you have ADD, how can you read it and remember what I just said? So let's get poignant, straight to the point. There's the mental health clinic that's here. Unfortunately, when you say mental health, people think of a mental illness. Well, actually it is, but it isn't. It's a disorder. Exactly. And as soon as we realize that we can go and we can seek help, then it's there. There's, as I said, magazines. There's actually an ADD magazine. There are counselors at school, at colleges. If you're in college, you can actually register with the disabilities department. And so if you have exams to take, they will actually sit you in a room by yourself and give you about half an hour more to take it. I don't know if they'll do that with me with state boards, but however, you know, you can, you know, they will work with you for your success. You just have to want it bad enough.
Well, in wanting it bad enough, do you believe that if we are proactive in this approach to adult attention deficit disorder, that we will do a better job of making sure that the people who, let's say, don't have access to the internet and who are in a position to not get to the Mental Health Association, that they will be able to better get that information somehow?
I think that if, for instance, our churches, our daycares, our, as I said, counselors at school, if, you know, just more information was just put out there.
How about the TV?
Actually,
we're using this as a vehicle. Yes.
Actually, that was how it began for me. I'm sorry. That is how the Strattera commercial that said, "Does it feel like your mind is like changing channels?" And I said, "Yeah, it does." You know. And, do you feel like you can't stay on task? I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And then I sought help and started on the medication. And yeah, but definitely television commercials.
Well, we're wrapping up your particular focus on this disorder, and we certainly want to make sure that the people in the audience know that this disorder is not synonymous to illness, and that it's okay for you to acknowledge that you need the help. And when we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will return with an adult attention deficit disorder individual who is juggling marriage, motherhood. Stay with us.
Good books, soothing oils, and relaxing incense is all here at Sister to Sister. African art, ethnic clothing, and Afrocentric cards. Find it here at Sister to Sister. Jewelry, health products, and handbags. What you need is at Sister to Sister. For that one place that takes care of the mind, body, and spirit, visit Sister to Sister, located in Salisbury at 428 East Fisher Street, or visit us online. We're ready to take care of you.
Where can you find fish tacos, sweet potato cheesecake, and salmon burgers? It's all right here at Snapper's Fish and Fries. It's the only place in Charlotte where you can place an order for these tasty dishes and get them in record time. Snapper's Fish and Fries is conveniently located in the Gold Hill Pavilion on North Tryon Street and is open Monday through Saturday. So the next time you want to grab something good but quick, head to Snapper's Fish and Fries. One bite and you're hooked.
And welcome back to Not Just the Blues. And our discussion on adult attention deficit disorder within the African American community continues. Our next guest is Shonda Peterson, a married woman of 2 children who's on medication for ADD. We want to welcome you, Shonda.
Nice. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so very much. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
You doing fine?
Yes.
A little bit nervous?
Yes,
All right. We're going to try to hold on to you so you can relax a little bit here. We want to talk to you just a little bit about what your day is like, being a mother, a student, and married, and all of those things that you need to be mindful of that sometimes slips your mind.
Okay. I say my day starts, the alarm clock going off in the morning, trying to iron, fix breakfast, read directions, you know, forgetting to pack my oldest child's lunch. My mother is there with me. She has to remind me periodically, it's 9 o'clock, it's time for him to go on the bus, or, you know, does he have his book bag, or did you give him his lunch money, and did you give the 2-year-old breakfast? You know, it's just simple things like that you know, that slip in my mind. Or,
so before you were diagnosed with ADD, what did you feel like was going on with you?
I think depression. I thought it was depression, and I thought, you know, just being tore in 2 or 3 directions, you know, just being tired, you know, depressed and stressed out.
Were you frustrated with yourself because you couldn't remember a lot of things that you thought you should remember?
Yes, I felt, well, maybe the depression and the stresses, you know, causing memory blocks, or, you know, I was making doctor appointments every 3 weeks, you know, trying to figure out what's going on, you know.
Were you going to a psychologist or psychiatrist every 3 weeks, or your general?
Just my general doctor, and of course she's not a psychiatrist, so, you know, we would talk, and, you know, she could do the best she would do the best she could, but, you know.
We find it interesting that until we understand that the body, mind, spirit is one unit, and that we maybe need to go to another direction to seek help and in another area, that we're sort of right there with that general practitioner, and we're looking for them to have all of the answers to everything, and they in fact don't have all of the answers. So how long was it that you went to the doctor, your general practitioner, before you moved on to the specialist?
It was 6 months, and we tried every depression medicine under the sun.
Okay.
And I'm like, it's not working. And she's like, well, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try Wellbutrin. And I'm like, I'm asleep, but it's not working.
So I'm still not forgetting
yes,
I'm not remembering anything. I'm just asleep here.
You know, it's just like the purpose was defeated. And she says, Shonda, she says, tell me a little bit about what you're experiencing. I'm like, I can't remember anything. I says, I can't read a book. If I read directions to cook hamburger helper, you know, by the time the hamburger thaws out, I'm like, Mom.
What were we doing?
Yeah, what were we doing? And she was like, boiling the noodles, I hope. You know what I'm saying? It was just simple things. And I said, Stacy, I said, something's wrong. I says, I'm asleep, you know, 13 hours of a 24-hour day. You know, I have kids. I have a 9-year-old. I had to actually hire a tutor, you know, to help him with his homework, because I'm reading the directions over and over and over and over, you know, and can't help him with a simple multiplication problem.
And once we found out that there was something going on other than a state of depression, then that went further into depression once you slept through the day.
Yes.
How are your days now?
My days now, I can sit down and help my 9-year-old with his homework. I can cook without yelling upstairs from my mother. You know, I can read a book. You know, I can actually fill out a college application now. Just simple things, you know.
And so what would be your message to the people who are actually suffering from the same symptoms that you described? What would be your message to them right now?
My message would be, don't be ashamed. Never be ashamed. Seek spiritual guidance. Ask someone. You know, ask someone, go to the library, check out a book. You know.
Because we don't have the answers ourselves, and we do need help as we move through this process of healing.
Exactly.
I think it's a wonderful commitment that you've made to come on and talk about your condition, and hopefully we'll be able to help other people who are watching, who are experiencing some of the same symptoms, and then they will subsequently go on to seek some help so that they can sit here and remember the things that they thought they were forgot. There's so much more ahead on Not Just the Blues. Still to come, we will hear from a mental health expert who has some experience and interesting advice for families of sufferers and the adult ADD victims themselves. And we'll hear from you, our studio audience. Don't forget those questions. Stay tuned.
Whether it's a training video, a marketing video, or a television program, you expect quality. Kinloch Productions exceeds those expectations and delivers excellence. Kinloch Productions is a full-service video production company recognized both nationally and internationally for its work. We involve our clients in every step of the process, making sure you get the product and service you deserve. Kinloch Productions. Let us put our imagination to work for you.
The everyday stressors in life can cause emotional trauma, and Trauma Services Associates is there to help. TSA is a behavioral health organization designed specifically for the African American community. Trauma Services Associates provides empowerment through education and awareness. Trauma Services Associates is there to help heal. For more information on TSA, call 1-800-466-4804. Trauma Services Associates, help and healing is on the way.
And welcome back to Not Just the Blues. And we're talking about ADD in African Americans. And joining us now is the Executive Director of the Hogg Foundation for Mental Health at the University of Texas in Austin, and also one of my mentors and very good friend, Dr. King Davis. Dr. Davis, thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here with you, and with your guest as well.
Thank you so very much. In our community, we are begun to identify with certain labels. And while we don't want to get stuck with ADD today, I want you to move this conversation to behaviors, disorders, period, in our community. And so while from a mainstream standpoint, people are starting to identify ADD, okay, that's something that I can relate to. But clinically, we sort of understand that there's something else going on here.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Well, what I thought in listening to your two guests so far is that the issues that they've raised are really broad, long-term issues in African American communities. And it's really about information. We could have had, you may have had a program already about breast cancer, cervical cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes, and the presentations would have been almost exactly the same. That we come late in the history of our diseases for care. And part of that, I think, relates to the real reason for your show and why it's so popular and good. And that's how people in our community get information. And the information that we get is often late, wrong. The information doesn't give us the kind of accuracy about disorders or problems that we have. And consequently, African American people come late in the history of their diseases. Sometimes near the point of death. So
most often.
Most often as well. The second part of that is in help seeking. Whether or not the information that we receive about ADD or about anything else really moves us towards getting help. Both of the people who you talked with earlier talked about how that information influenced them. And they're very unusual in our community because they took the information and they did something with it. And then the third part is whether or not once they use the information, whether the people who provide them with services does them well in terms of the care. Is the diagnosis accurate? Is the medication right? Do they follow them through? And in some instances, the general practitioners that they've consulted really were probably not the best people to consult.
Exactly. So we know that we have a history of masking.
Yes.
And sometimes even from a practitioner standpoint, the perpetuation of that masking comes in a prescription form.
Absolutely.
Because we don't really have the answers, and so we don't have the data also to draw from. And what's the next best thing that we should do? We should write a prescription so that the individual can feel better for the moment, but are we really addressing the issue?
Not at all.
And most often that question that is answered, not at all.
Not at all.
Let's talk a little bit more about the not at all. You and I both, we see folks on a regular basis, and what we found in our community, most specific, is that the information and the treatment modalities are not culturally relevant or linguistically appropriate for our community. Can we talk a little bit about how to better bring the information to the folks?
Sure. Well, the kind of program that you have is one way. My sense, though, is that we need to ask people, what are the best ways in our community to get information to you? When you talked with Anita earlier, what's the best way to get information to her?
Exactly.
What's the best way to get information to parents that's accurate information about a whole variety of circumstances? Is that the church? Shonda thought so. Is that on the local radio station, local TV station, newspapers? How do we get the information out?
Okay. Again, as this topic is so important, we need to go to the people and ask them what their needs are. So let's take a few of the questions, starting right here.
Good afternoon. I have a child that has attention deficit disorder. My question was, at first he was diagnosed with something different. How do you know the difference, the symptoms and the signs? That's one of my questions. Another question is there a cure? Or is he going to have to deal with this the rest of his life? Another question is, this is my topic. It really is. This hits home for me.
Okay.
We do need more people and more shows like this, because I never knew this. You guys were here, and I thank God I'm here today because of that. Because you really helped me. Like I said, this touches home with me, and I have a child that is mildly mentally retarded. Also, my thing is the causes. What causes it? How can I prevent it? Or is there anything we can do to prevent it?
Go ahead.
Take the first part?
Yeah. Well, preventable, I'm going to say yes. And the other thing is that I don't believe, as a clinician, that all of these labels are appropriate.
Right.
So without knowing the individual, having talked to your child, having talked to you, it is very difficult. In fact, it is impossible for me to sanction a diagnosis that someone else has given them. Right. As we have done these shows all week, we have presented information to the people that is in defiance of some of the diagnoses that we've received. So I would dare to venture that I could not say that he has ADD or he's mildly this or mildly that. What I can say is that we have to look at our behaviors. And I'm a behavioralist, so we go to modifying behavior as opposed to always trying to attack the sensory and mobility. The second part.
Well, one of the things that I would advise on, your question really was, how do you make the difference? In some instances, I'd pay far more attention to outlining as specifically as possible what those behaviors are. Okay. And whether or not it carries a specific diagnosis may be immaterial, not important. It's what are you seeing, and the frequency and the consistency of the things that you're seeing. That's what I'd like to hear as a clinician. What is it that we're seeing in our communities and with our children?
Okay. While I know that these topics are so important, and unfortunately we don't have the time to do a whole assessment here, because that's what this leads to. Sure. And we certainly are looking at Shell season 2, 3, 4, and 5 guys back there. We're going to try and keep our questions short and concise so we can get to most people. Right here, ma'am.
I'm a mother of a 15-year-old with ADHD, and a lot of people don't know what that is, but she's on the hyperactive scale and very impulsive. My question, as I was listening to the first guest, is how do I, as a caregiver, prepare her for adulthood? Because I can't run behind her. You forgot your coat, you forgot your keys, and I just need some hints how to prepare her for living a life without mom giving her reminders.
I believe that the best preparation would be that the fact that you've identified something that's going on earlier than the adult stage. And so by the time that she gets there with proper direction, and of course we will be leaving you with some resources today that may very well be able to help you move to some practitioner that is in a better position to help you move her into adult stage without the dependency on you. How about right here?
Good evening. I'm real grateful for this show. I wasn't supposed to stay, but I'm glad I did.
Yes, you were.
Sounds like everybody's talking about me. And, you know, the young lady that spoke of having a learning impairment, and that's something I've been struggling with. It's like I forget everything and trying to hold down a job, and, you know, I got so many things on my plate. I figured that was the problem, is that I'm overwhelmed. But listening to you all today, it seems like this is a time, it's late in my life, but is this a time for me to get diagnosed one way or another? Because I forget everything. It's like I put up sticky notes everywhere, notes on my job, you know, in my home, and it's frustrating, very frustrating and tiring.
Short-term memory loss is natural.
Yes.
And sometimes we are very hard on ourselves for that very natural process of short-term memory loss. Oh my goodness, I went upstairs and what did I come up here for? Stop, think for a moment. So it does not mean that there's something going on that's so drastic that a little modification won't be able to help you. Again, we are not in a position to do any diagnosing here. We would have to certainly talk to you, see what's going on in your life, and then subsequently try to move you in a direction to better help you. But I believe that you're doing fine because you're standing here and you remembered everything you were supposed to tell us this afternoon. Okay, we're going to go right to here.
Yes, I would like to know, are you born with it and not know it, and it carries you into adulthood? That's why it's called adult. And what are some of the stages you go through when you find out that you have it? What brings it on as an adult?
These are really a spectrum of disorders, and many of them are reflected very early in a person's life. One of the issues that I'd raised earlier, though, is that because we are not as familiar with the information and the symptoms in our community, it often gets to be labeled as something. And so a lot of youngsters go through first grade, second grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, not really being sure, and I think that's part of what we heard earlier. There are difficulties in terms of focusing or concentration, task completion, things like that. And it gets labeled sometimes as just being a bad person, or a person who's lazy or shiftless and all kinds of things of that sort. So part of what happens is that we believe that these really disorders or dilemmas really start very early in life, and they carry through into a young adulthood, into adulthood, and as I think the lady just mentioned, it's possible that we carry them sometime even into later adulthood. I have a number of professional colleagues, physicians, for example, who are in their 50s who also have very similar kinds of problems and difficulties.
As always, we are out of time, but we truly had a wonderful discussion that we just began here this afternoon. And I want to thank our guests today, Anita Hartley, Shonda Peterson, and of course, Dr. King Davis. Thanks for being here. Thanks to our studio audience for taking part in the discussion. And thank you for watching. And remember, it's not just the blues.
Thank you.